It was a typical Friday evening at Marrows, a quaint and popular restaurant tucked away in the older part of town. The dim lighting and rustic decor gave it a cozy yet slightly mysterious ambiance. I was a regular, drawn not just by the food, but by the peculiar charm of the place. That night, the air was tinged with an unusual electric charge, a sense of anticipation I couldn't quite place. The usual hum of conversation filled the room, as patrons, oblivious to the brewing storm, enjoyed their meals. Halfway through dinner, a man walked in. He was tall and gaunt, with piercing eyes that seemed to absorb the light. There was something off about him, something that made my skin crawl. He sat in a corner, alone, his presence casting a shadow that seemed to stretch far beyond his table. The waiter, a young man who'd always been cheerful, approached the stranger with a menu. The conversation was low but intense. The waiter's usual smile faltered, his face turning ashen. Without another word, he hurried to the kitchen. The order, as I later learned, was bizarre. A dish not on the menu, something archaic and macabre. Whispers spilled from the kitchen. The chefs, usually masters of their craft, were in a panic. I caught snippets of their conversation, words like impossible and shouldn't be done. Yet the dish was prepared, a grotesque creation that defied culinary norms. As the dish was served to the stranger, the restaurant's atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, the lights flickered. Patrons stopped eating, a collective unease taking hold. The man ate slowly, deliberately, as if performing a ritual. That's when the first scream shattered the air. The scream came from a woman at a nearby table. Her eyes were fixed on the strange man, horror etched on her face. Others turned to look, and a wave of panic swept through the restaurant. The man remained unfazed, continuing his eerie meal. Suddenly, the lights dimmed to a near blackout. The candles on the tables flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. A cold draft swept through the room, carrying with it a faint, almost inaudible whisper that seemed to echo from the walls. In the dim candlelight, the shadows appeared to twist and writhe. It was as if the darkness itself had come alive, slithering around the feet of the patrons, who were now frozen in a mix of fascination and terror. As I watched, the strange man's features began to contort. His skin seemed to ripple. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light. He was no longer human, but something else, something ancient and evil. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a voice that filled my head. It spoke of a curse, one that bound an ancient entity to the restaurant. Marrows was not just a quaint eatery, it was a prison. And the strange man, a manifestation of the entity, had been inadvertently freed. Chaos erupted as the entity unleashed its wrath. The room distorted, the walls seemed to breathe, and the shadows lashed out like dark tendrils. Patrons screamed, running for the doors, only to find them sealed shut. Amidst the pandemonium, I scrambled to find a way out. The entity's malevolent gaze turned towards me, and I felt an icy grip on my soul. Desperation gave me strength, and I hurled a chair through a window, shattering the glass. Through the broken window, I tumbled out into the night. Behind me, Marrows imploded in a vortex of darkness, the screams of the trapped patrons fading into a haunting silence. The next day, the site where Marrows once stood was just an empty lot. No trace remained of the restaurant or its patrons. The entity, along with Marrows, had vanished, leaving behind only whispered tales of the night when reality itself unraveled. Since that night, I've been haunted by what I witnessed. The memory of Marrows and the terror it concealed lingers in my mind. I know now that some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and some horrors are too ancient to ever truly die. In the heart of the city stood Le Gourmet, a restaurant renowned for its exquisite cuisine. The chef, Damien Leblanc, was a culinary genius. His dishes were not just meals, they were experiences that tantalized the senses. I joined Le Gourmet as a junior chef, eager to learn from the best. Damien was known for his monthly special, a dish shrouded in secrecy. Only he knew the recipe, and it was prepared in a locked kitchen. Patrons praised its unique flavor, but there was something unsettling about it, something almost forbidden. One night, I stayed late to finish inventory. As I walked past the locked kitchen, I heard sounds, a mix of chanting and a strange, rhythmic chopping. Curiosity overcame me, and I peered through the keyhole. What I saw chilled me to the bone. Damien stood over a large cauldron, his eyes wild with fervor. Around him were strange symbols and dark liquids. The ingredients he added were unlike anything I'd seen. They seemed to move, to resist. The final product was a stew, dark and thick. It bubbled as if alive, emitting an aroma that was both enticing and repulsive. Damien ladled the stew into a serving bowl, his face a mask of twisted satisfaction. I was about to withdraw when I saw it, a shadowy figure in the corner of the kitchen, bound and gagged. The realization hit me like a wave of nausea. The secret ingredient, was it human? The next day, I confronted Damien. He didn't deny it. Instead, he offered me a choice: join him in his culinary explorations or become the next ingredient. His madness was palpable, his threat real. I was trapped. To refuse Damien meant a gruesome end, but to join him, that was unthinkable. Yet, survival instinct took over. I agreed, hoping to find another way out. I became Damien's unwilling apprentice. Each special dish was a nightmare, each ingredient a horror. I watched in silent terror, praying for salvation. One night, I found my chance. A health inspector was due to visit. I managed to get a message out, a warning about the locked kitchen. The health inspection turned into a raid. The police broke into the locked kitchen only to find it normal, the cauldron gone. Damien had been tipped off. Damien disappeared that day, along with his unholy recipes. Le Gourmet was shut down, its name forever tarnished. I left the culinary world, haunted by what I'd witnessed. The memory of Damien's dishes and the secret ingredient still torments me. To this day, rumors surface of a mysterious chef offering a unique dining experience, always one step ahead of the law. I fear Damien is still out there, and the thought of what his next special might be keeps me awake at night. I had always been fascinated by the old restaurant at the end of the street, known as the Empty Table. It had been closed for years, yet it stood there, untouched and shrouded in rumors. One night, driven by curiosity and a love for urban exploration, I decided to venture inside. As I stepped through the broken door, a chilling air enveloped me. The inside was coated in a layer of dust, and the tables were set as if waiting for guests who would never arrive. Strangely, one table in the center was spotless, with gleaming cutlery and an unlit candle. Walking further in, I began to hear whispers. They were faint and seemed to come from the walls themselves. With each step I took, the whispers grew louder, and I felt as if I were being watched. Turning towards the bar, I gasped. Reflected in the mirror were ghostly figures sitting at the tables, their hollow eyes following my every move. Yet, when I turned back, the chairs were empty. A cold breeze brushed past me, and a voice, dry as old leaves, whispered in my ear, "Welcome to the empty table, where the lost dine." There was no one there, but the sensation of being touched was unmistakable. Panic set in, and I rushed back to the door, but it was gone. In its place was just a wall. The restaurant had trapped me. The candles on the tables suddenly lit up by themselves, casting eerie shadows. The figures in the mirror began to move, their whispers turning into low moans. I realized they were the souls of past patrons, forever bound to this cursed place. A piano in the corner started playing on its own, a haunting melody that filled the room. The figures in the mirror raised their glasses to me, their faces twisted in silent screams. The voice returned, telling me the tale of the empty table. a restaurant that once thrived but was cursed when its owner delved into dark arts seeking eternal prosperity. Instead, he bound the souls of himself and his patrons to the restaurant. I felt the cold hands of the ghostly patrons on me, trying to drag me into their world. In a desperate attempt, I threw the unlit candle at the mirror. It shattered, and the ghosts screamed as they were momentarily distracted. Using that moment, I found the door reappeared. I didn't look back and burst out into the night, the moans and whispers fading behind me. The next day, I passed by the empty table. It stood silent and undisturbed. I knew the truth, but realized no one would believe my tale. The restaurant remained, waiting for its next unwary visitor. In the days following my escape from the empty table, I was plagued by nightmares. The ghostly patrons, their hollow eyes, and their silent screams haunted my dreams. I couldn't shake the feeling that a part of me was still trapped inside those walls. Driven by a need for answers, I started researching the restaurant's history. Old newspaper clippings revealed a series of mysterious disappearances linked to the empty table. The owner, a reclusive man named Marrow, was rumored to have dabbled in occult practices. My story caught the attention of a local journalist who approached me for an interview. Skeptical yet intrigued, she wanted to investigate the empty table herself. Against my better judgment, I agreed to accompany her, hoping to confront and end my nightmares. As we stood before the restaurant, a sense of foreboding overwhelmed me. The door creaked open, as if inviting us in. The journalist, armed with her camera and recorder, stepped inside with a mix of fear and excitement. No sooner had we entered than the door vanished again. The room darkened, and the whispers returned, more menacing than before. The journalist was petrified, realizing too late the truth in my tale. The ghostly patrons appeared once more, partaking in an ethereal feast. Marrow's spirit, a shadowy figure, presided over the table. He spoke of his eternal hunger for souls, revealing his plan to trap us there forever. In a moment of desperate courage, I challenged Marrow, accusing him of his crimes against the innocent. The spirits paused, and a silence fell over the room. Marrow's ghostly form flickered, his hold on the restaurant weakening. Realizing Marrow's power was linked to his ownership of the restaurant, I set the journalist's camera to record a final message. Declaring the restaurant abandoned and releasing all claims, we denounced Marrow's ownership. A blinding light filled the room as Marrow's spirit screamed in rage and disintegrated. The ghosts of the patrons, released from their bondage, faded away with whispers of gratitude. The journalist and I found ourselves outside, the restaurant crumbling to dust behind us. The curse of the empty table was broken, but the memories of those lost souls lingered. The journalist's story made headlines, revealing the dark history of the empty table. Those skeptics doubted our tale. Those who knew the truth avoided the cursed site. Since then, I've been free of the nightmares, but I can never forget the haunted eyes of those trapped within the empty table. Their echoes serve as a grim reminder of the fine line between curiosity and folly. In a forgotten corner of the city stood the Whispering Diner, a place that locals whispered about but seldom visited. Its reputation was curious, known for silence rather than its menu. I was a journalist, always in pursuit of peculiar stories, and this diner piqued my interest. As I entered, a hush fell over the room. The patrons ate in complete silence, their movements slow and deliberate. The waitstaff moved like shadows, their feet never making a sound. It was as if the sound itself was forbidden within these walls. The owner, a gaunt figure named Mr. Grayson, watched over the diner with piercing eyes. He spoke in whispers, if at all. When I asked about the silence, he simply placed a finger to his lips and pointed to a sign. In silence, we serve. Curiosity led me to visit the diner several times, observing the strange ritual of quietude. One evening, a loud patron entered, breaking the silence with his laughter. The next moment, he was gone, as if swallowed by the diner itself. No one reacted. It was as if he had never been there. Disturbed, I started investigating. I learned that over the years, several patrons of the Whispering Diner had disappeared. The police had no leads, the diner was clean, and Mr. Grayson was a ghost in records. On my next visit, I decided to dine. The food was unremarkable, but with each bite, a sense of unease grew within me. The diner's walls seemed to close in, and the silence became oppressive, almost solid. Mid-meal, I began to hear them, faint whispers, not from the patrons, but from the diner itself. The walls, the floor, even the utensils whispered in a language I couldn't understand. Confronting Mr. Grayson, I demanded answers. His response was a twisted smile as he whispered, "The diner feeds on sound, on life. Silence keeps it satiated, but it always hungers for more." Realizing the danger, I attempted to flee, but the exit was gone. The diner had changed, the walls now pulsing and alive. The whispers grew into cacophonous screams. In a panic, I broke a window, the sound shattering the diner's spell. I tumbled out into the street, the diner's facade normal again. But when I looked back, the Whispering Diner had vanished, leaving behind an empty lot. The Whispering Diner became another unsolved mystery, a story whispered in the city's undercurrents. Some say it still appears, luring in the unsuspecting, its hunger for sound and life never satiated.